بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أحبتي جميعا، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. تقبل الله صيامكم وقيامكم بهذا الشهر الفضيل. إن شاء الله في هذا اليوم سنبدأ بأول محاضرة من محاضرات مادة الوراثة التي تعتبر جزءا من مادة البيولوجي للمرحلة الأولى في كلية الطب جامعة د. The title of this lecture is Introduction to Genetic. Before starting, I would like to talk briefly about the history of genetic. The history of genetic started with the work of Mendel. As you know, his work was on pea plant, which is published in 1866. After years, two scientists used dyes synthesized by the German organic chemistry and observed that colored bodies in cells, which is called chromosomes, In 1905, a scientist observed that all pairs of homologous chromosomes are the same size except the sex chromosome X and Y, different size. In 1944, a scientist identified DNA as the genetic materials. Pieces of DNA can transfer genes into bacterial cells and transform them genetically. In 1953, Roseland and Wilkins showed that DNA is a double helix for the first time. In 1970, a scientist discovered reverse transcriptase in retroviruses. The most important things in 1987, Carey invented the polymerase chain reaction (PCR). In 1996, Land cloned the lamb Dolly from adult mammalian gland tissue. Finally, in 2000, completion of a human genome. The second part of this lecture is just give you some abbreviation or terms about genetics. I'll start with the genetics. What's the genetics? Genetics is a branch of biology concerned with the study of genes, genetic variation, and heredity in organisms. You can see from this figure, from the title, from gene to human being, I think you have been studied before anatomy and other. Human being consists, or the human body consists of many organs. Each tissue is made up of trillions of cells, and each cell consists of cytoplasm and the nucleus, and the nucleus contains an identical complement of chromosome. One specific chromosomes per each chromosome is one long DNA molecules, with DNA is a double helix, as you know. And the second thing, what's the genome? Because you should recognize or make differentiation between genome and gene. Genomes is the complete set of instructions for making an organism. It contains the master blueprint for all cellular structure and activities for the lifetime of the cell or organism. What's the heredity? بعبارة بسيطة, the passing on of a characteristic or trait, يعني الصفات, from parents اللي هم الآباء to offspring اللي هم children. You can see from these two photos, the children look like their parents. Offspring is another name for children for male or female parents. What's the genes? Genes are small section of DNA that code for a specific trait. كل جين يكون إلى كود على صفة معينة من الصفات. Their coded information determines the nature and development of organisms. The code is the order of the bases letter, and we have it's about hundreds or thousands of bases in length for each gene. Chromosome, I'll talk later about the chromosome in details, and some diseases is related with the chromosome, but now I just want to know genes are arranged one next to each other on a chromosome. Each chromosome has different kinds of genes that control different traits. If you see these two identical chromosomes, you can find three different colors: blue, green, and brown. That means each color represents genes. That gene control different traits. What's the homologous chromosome? Homologous chromosomes are two chromosomes which contain the same genes. These two chromosomes contain the same genes but with the different traits. But they may contain different form of the gene, which is allele. The traits are specific characteristics that vary from one individual to another. You can see from this figure a person with attached ear, another with a free, a person with a cleft chin, another without. And these traits are determined by inherited genes. Allele is a different form of a particular gene positioned in the same relative place, which is called locus on a homologous chromosome. يعني إذا شفنا هذا الهومولوجوس كروموسوم، هذا الفيجر اللي موجود، راح نشوف two different colors, yellow and green colors, which is called locus. هنا هو same gene but with different alleles, means different traits. Each allele, is represented by a letter. Okay, when sperm and egg unit, which is make fertilization, the chromosomes only half from each parent, يعني 50% from your father, 50% from your mother, comes together. The alleles of this chromosome are then paired up, and two alleles are inherited for each gene, one from each parent. What's the difference between phenotype and genotype? I should know what's the phenotype and what's the genotype. Briefly, phenotype means the way an organism looks like. يعني الأشياء اللي تشوفها أنت برا. The red hair, brown hair, white skin, black skin, other things. That's called phenotype. And the phenotypes يقولون أنه ممكن يتأثر. الphenotypes means genotype plus environment. يعني ممكن البيئة تأثر على الجين بتعطيه صفات. For example, إذا سنيك عايشة في منطقة خضراء ممكن يكون لونها أخضر، لكن تعيش بالصحراء إذا كان نقلناها وعيشناها في الصحراء ممكن يكون لونها رمادي مقارب إلى شكل التربة. وهذا أوعزه أنه حتى وإن كان هو same gene لكن تأثرت بالenvironment وبالتالي تغيرت. الجينوتايبس هو the gene combination of an organism، وبالتالي راح نرمز له بالوراثة A capital A capital باعتبار trait, two letters A capital A small A small A small. عندنا مصطلحين الدومينانت والريسيسيف جينز اللي هي الصفات السائدة والمتناحية اللي راح نذكر عنها. والجينز can be dominant means show their traits which keeps other genes from showing their traits. Genes can be recessive, don't show their trait, are hidden by a dominant gene. That's some examples about dominant and recessive trait. صفات السائدة والمتناحية. Two alleles are inherited for each gene in simple single trait crosses. عندنا مصطلح نسميه pure dominant اللي هي السائد النقي means an organism with two dominant genes The pure recessive means an organism with two recessive genes. ده مصطلح يسمونه homo يعني مش شابه. Homozygous means organisms with two identical alleles for a trait. For example, T capital or T small. That's called purebred. Heterozygous means an organisms with two different alleles for a trait, T capital, T small, means this organism has one dominant and one recessive genes. The dominant shares the recessive trait is hidden. This one called hybrid. We have two kinds of hybrid, di and monohybrids. The dihybrid, di means two, crossing parents who differ in two traits, A capital, one trait, E capital, the second one, A small, E small. Mono, crossing parents who differ in only one trait. We have many theory of heredity. The first one, which is pre-Mendelian, called the blending يعني mixing. Blending theory means the heredity material from each parent mixes in the children. Means it looks like blended like two liquids in a solution. هذا الblending مجرد انه يمزج الصفات. That's an example of this theory. Particulate theory of heredity means it looks like particles اللي means gene are passed from parents to children. That there is no mixing. Yeah. Okay. I finished the history and terminology. Then I'll just go to Mendel, describe the father of genetic. Who's Mendel? Mendel is Austrian man, born in Austria. He's a father of modern genetics. Work in this garden. His work was in pea plants to study inheritance of trait. He's the first one to discover principle of genetics and explain some basic law of genetics, dominant and recessive trait, and showed how traits are passed from parents to their children. Mendel across them we have term fertilization and cross. Fertilization means the uniting of male and female gametes, cross combining gametes from parents with the different traits. What did Mendel find? First, he discovered different laws and rules that explain factors affecting heredity. The rule of unit factor. What's the rule? Each organism has two alleles for each trait. كل صفة عندنا two alleles. Alleles differ from of the same gene. Genes located on the chromosome, as I said before, they control how an organism develops. The rule of dominance, the trait that is observed in offspring is the dominant trait اللي نعطيها capital letter, uppercase. The trait that disappear in the children is the recessive trait اللي نعطيها lowercase. هنا مندل اختار this plant because it's easy to grow. This kind of plant self-fertilizing, easily crossbred in designed experiment, and reproduced and mature in a single season. Also, he worked with the 7 unit characters. You can see from this figure we have 7 unit characters, and these are visible. You can see it by your eyes. I mean the difference. And he established a true breeding varieties in which the seed that's available. And if I ask you what's the factors that contribute to Mendel's success in the area, first, he chose the suitable organism, restricted his experiment to 1 or few pairs of contrasting trait, keep accurate quantitative records. We have 3 laws of Mendel. The first one, law of segregation, اللي عندكم بالعربي معروف قانون الانعزال. The 2 alleles for a trait must separate, ينفصلون when the gametes are formed. A parent randomly passed only 1 allele for each trait to each offspring. يعني الأب ينطي فقط 1 allele، يعني كل الأب والأم تنطي 1 allele يروحون للأطفال. الفيرست لو اللي سميناه law of segregation، طبعا بالمحاضرة أنا مسميه second law. Each trait has 2 genes. كل صفة بيها 2 genes to allele, one from mother, another from father. Traits can be either dominant or recessive. You know that. A dominant trait is only need 1 genes. يعني إذا عندي A capital, A small, okay, it's dominant. A capital is dominant. But the recessive should have 2 genes in order to express. يعني لازم عندي A small. That's an example. Unaffected carrier father, unaffected carrier mother. The first one unaffected, okay. Unaffected, but the fourth one affected. هم اثنينهم حاملين لصفة معينة. Egg and the sperm are sex called gametes. Segregation is the separation of alleles during gamete formation. That's another example. I'd like to talk more about that. Can you find this one? Surely you can't. The law of independent assortment means the genes for different traits are inherited independently for each other. Mendel did a dihybrid cross? Yes. Mendel performed a second series of cross that called dihybrid crosses because the children are dihybrid. They are product for 2 different strains that differ in regards to 2 traits. That's the dihybrid. You can see the first generation, parent generation, 2 traits, T capital, G capital, T capital, T small, G small, T with G and T small, G small, and the first generation. This one, T capital, T small, G capital, G small. The second generation, you can see with this one. I think you know all of these في مادة الأحياء تعرفون هاي الأشياء. Also الاحتمالية عندنا 4 احتمالات، وهنا عندنا 4 احتمالات، وبالتالي ممكن ينطونا نسبة 16، ونسبة 16 اللي راح تنطينا النتيجة. Okay. What's the Mendel hypothesis? We have 4 hypotheses. The first one, alternative form of genes are responsible for variations in hereditary characters. alternative from RNA called allele. For each character, an organism inherited 2 alleles, one from each parent. If the 2 alleles differ, one is fully expressed, one is fully expressed dominant allele, the other is completely masked, meaning recessive allele. The 2 alleles for each character segregate during germ protection. I think that's one. I will say thank you for your attention, and أتمنى إن شاء الله أن تكونوا استفدتم من هذه المحاضرة، وإن شاء الله نلتقيكم في محاضرة لاحقة بإذن الله. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.